Thank you. Hello. So, like Carly said, I'm Dana Woods. I have been a wife for 18 years. I am a mother of 2 girls. I feel like a slacker based on the last 2 speakers, but don't judge me. I am a proud graduate of Howard University. I am a Midwesterner at heart, although I've lived in 8 states. And I am a senior learning experience designer here at Belk. And you'll see why I chose those 5 things a little bit later. So today I wanted to talk to you about something very near and dear to me, but hopefully near and dear to you all as well. And these are diversity dimensions. Diversity and inclusion is a hot topic. There's a lot of focus on diversity and inclusion, especially in the workplace. But really, diversity and inclusion are 2 different things. Diversity in the workplace simply means how is your employee population made up? How many women as opposed to men? How many ethnicities are represented? How many veterans do we have? Things like this, right? And that's great, don't get me wrong. I love looking out when I'm in the atrium or anywhere at Belk and seeing all the different faces and hairstyles and styles and all of that. But the truth is, diversity doesn't mean much unless you have inclusion. So what inclusion is where each and every one of those people feels comfortable bringing their whole selves to work. And that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about. What is your whole self? What does that mean? And so I'm going to talk about diversity dimensions, which are our lenses and filters on how we view the world. So diversity dimensions, can think of them as characteristics that influence how we see the world, but also they can influence how others see us. And whether it's a lens or a filter is up to you. All right, so to do this, I'm going to talk about a model that was published in 1990 by 2 women who published a book, and it's called The Diversity Wheel. And think of it like an onion. So they just studied, and found that there are certain factors that shape our beliefs and ideas that we have from our upbringing, experiences, and things like that. And of course, we carry those around with us wherever we go, and they influence how we connect with others, but also how others see us. And so they constructed this framework called the diversity wheel. And so it's like an onion. The middle is the primary layer. The second is the secondary layer. I love the easy names. And because we're at work, this 3rd layer is the organizational layer that has to do with the workplace. So the primary dimensions, think of this as things that maybe you were born with, things that are difficult to change or usually don't change, and things that are very close to who you are and how you identify as a person. The core of this is our personality. But things like your age, your ethnicity, your race, your gender, and your sexual orientation, these are things that typically we're born with. That's kind of who we are. This is the core or the primary dimensions, but they're the most outwardly visible, right? So most of the diversity and inclusion work focuses on these things. But that's only part of the story, right? That's only part of who we are. And we want to know how to bring our whole selves. So look at this. This is the 2nd layer, or the secondary dimensions. Secondary just has to do with how much they impact how we think and choices we make, how we live our lives, and with whom we connect. So look at all of these things in the secondary dimensions. Hopefully you can see them all. These can change over time, right, because of those things. And therefore, when these things change, it also changes how we view others and ourselves. I know for one, before I had any kids and I got on a plane and someone had a little baby or a little kid, I probably would roll my eyes and be like, oh dear. Then after I had kids and both of my kids had to travel at 9 months, my lenses changed on that whole situation, right? So these are things that could change throughout our lifetime, but ironically, a lot of these things are hidden from others. You wouldn't know these things unless you talked to people, got to know them a little more. Also interesting, when people describe themselves, they'll probably choose things that are from this group of dimensions. And then because we're at work, this is important, right? So regardless of the other 2 layers, This is the organizational layer, and this impacts how we are in the workplace, who we connect with. Do you eat lunch with people just in your team, or do you break out and eat lunch or connect with other people? What's your status? What's the seniority like? A lot of these form your work culture. And so that's why I thought this was important to talk about, because a lot of times in the workplace, we want to look outward for how our culture is shaped. But the truth is, the power to how our culture is shaped is within each of us, right? And how we come to work and who we interact with and all of that. So these are the organizational dimensions. So now that we've gone through those, there's no test, don't worry. We're going to do a silent activity. So these are all the 26 dimensions that I spoke of. So first I want to think about the earliest influences on your life and what made you who you are. And think about 2 or 3 of dimensions and which category they fall under. Just think to yourself. You can play this at home, by the way, or at work. All right, now if I had to ask you to describe yourself using only 5 dimensions, which dimensions would you choose? Tough, right? Show of hands, how many of those were mostly from the secondary category? Okay, so a lot, right? Remember I said those are the ones that are hidden, but those are the ones we usually choose to identify ourselves. So interesting, right? So you have to connect with people to get to know how they really want to be perceived. I love that about perception, it's very important. And then finally, when you think about connecting with others, are there any of these characteristics that usually create roadblocks for yourself that you're like, I don't really want to deal with this, kind of like before I had kids. I wasn't mean to the people on the plane, by the way, never. But what are roadblocks for you that maybe limit the people that you reach out to or who you want to connect to? And if that is happening, then that's really a filter between you and being the most inclusive person that you can be. So you want to reduce the number of filters that you have. It's okay to have lenses, and we all have lenses because we're all shaped by our experiences and how we view things, So that's okay, but we don't want to make any roadblocks because we want to be inclusive. And that's how we can bring our whole selves to work. So finally, I'll just say, what things do you notice in others? When you first see people, we might focus on the primary dimensions because we can see those. Like maybe when I got up here, maybe you imagined how I would sound or what I would say, and things like that. So often those are things that we notice first, but we should dig a little deeper if we really want to connect with others. And when we do that, this amazing thing happens where people feel like it's okay to really express some of those hidden dimensions. And this isn't rocket science, so there's nothing like mysterious or, strange. All of us have these dimensions. All of us are diverse, and it's wonderful. But we have to also be inclusive. So we make sure that we create that culture where everyone can feel comfortable and bring their whole selves to work. And so that's the goal. So as you leave here, I just want you to be more aware of how you're thinking and when you're approaching other people or making the choice about whether to connect to a new person or not. I want you to just think through some of these things and think about what kind of lens can I put on or what things may I share with this person so that I can be closer to that person and create that inclusive workplace where we all want to work. That's it.